Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about gacha games, which have had a larger impact on my adult life than I'd honestly like to disclose. So let's discuss some of the problems I've identified with them and propose some solutions. To help those unaware of just what a gacha game is, let me explain the origin and basic principle quickly. A gacha game is based upon the gachapon system, those machines that you put an amount of money into to get a toy, but the toy you get is random and it's just based upon what's inside the machine at the time. Gachas follow the same principle, it's just on your phone instead of in reality. Just like in reality, gachas make you spend some in-game currency that can be given out for doing some tasks in-game or bought with real money for a toy. This toy could be character, equipment, items, whatever really. It depends on the game. But some toys are definitely better than others, and you can get multiple copies of the same toy if you're unlucky. As for if this model is profitable, if it works, well, I'll leave it up to your conclusion. I might be leaning towards yes. On screen right now is just some gameplay of one of the gachas that I used to play, Dragalia Lost, and I'll preface some of the problems that I have with gachas with an answer to a question you might have or might have had if you'd already played a gacha. Why do people play them? Well, it's hard to say exactly, but they're fun, undoubtedly. I've asked friends why they're fun, but it mainly boils down to some of the rush you get when you finally get that character or that toy that you really wanted to get, or the euphoria you feel when you beat the boss that you just couldn't for a really long time. They're really easy to fall in love with, and there's so many different genres which implement gacha mechanics that anyone can fall in love with. There's Disney gachas, there's rhythm game gachas, there's a gacha for everyone out there. I really do treasure the time I spent playing these games, mostly. And the sense of community I felt when I played some of these gachas is honestly irreplaceable. Memories of sitting with my friends trying to beat some boss together or comparing what we got when we last used the gacha system were genuinely great times and very fond memories. But I did say played past tense, so I quit playing them at some point. But why exactly did I do that? Let's find out. I've honestly made them sound pretty good so far. A sense of community, friendship, and fun gameplay. And I mean, you are right, but we're still in the honeymoon phase. Let me explain myself a bit better. All gachas have a similar experience at their core. You download it, start the game, and get a basic understanding of the game, its characters, its world, the gameplay, and maybe you even join the community and see what's around. While doing this, you get showered with rewards, including in-game currency for doing simple tasks. This in-game currency can be used for summoning more characters, so you can use these to progress more in the game, maybe explore some more options, have some more fun. I've dubbed this phase, the intro to early game phase, the honeymoon phase, because it feels really good. But then you progress a bit further, maybe get into the mid game, you're doing some harder content, and then you're hit with a difficulty spike. You can't really do anything about it. You can't go any further in the game because it's just too hard, so you're left with two realistic options. Grind, meaning replay the content that you already have for upgrade materials so you can make your existing characters better, or open up your wallet, spend some cash to get some premium characters, maybe some more options that you didn't have before so you can beat the content. On screen right now is a different game. Fire Emblem Heroes hadn't opened this one in a very long time, and I'm just using the gacha system. But these two lines of thinking that I was explaining earlier give way to the pay to win and free to play ideology, because realistically, it's very possible to play these games without spending any money. You didn't have to spend any money downloading it, so you just spend your time instead. But time is money. So here's my first problem. These games actively encourage you to spend a lot of money on them to get rewards so you don't have to spend money. And time sinks aren't necessarily a bad thing. You do just want to pass the time from time to time. But from my own and others' experience, you do miss out on a lot if they start to consume your life, which they can quite easily. I don't want to think about it too much, but there are many, many times where I can remember myself zoning out in social situations just to play my game, do some mindless task because I don't want to miss out on a reward. Friends have reassured me that I'm definitely not the only one who does this, and this isn't limited to the people who just want to play freely too. There's daily missions, weekly events, limited characters, all to keep people playing constantly so they don't miss out on the next big thing. It's a shame, really. And problem number two, some, or a lot, of gachas actively encourage you to spend money through pop-ups and easy integrations of spending money. If this doesn't get you, then what about a limited version of your favorite character in a cute outfit, or a little boost to their stats so you could clear the mission that you couldn't earlier with them? And it's only £5, so see the problem? Sounds pretty tempting. And if you don't have the time to spend to get all these items and save and save and save waiting for what you want, you have no other option than to spend money. People in vulnerable mental states or those with addictive or collector mindsets can and easily will spend money on things like this. They can stop themselves, yes, but most games try to aid this poor behavior, like the pop-ups I was mentioning earlier, some bogus sales seen above, and even not allowing you to use the gacha system if you've turned off in-app purchases, which is just poor practice. And yes, the companies do have to make money, but when you consider the financial strain that people can unknowingly put themselves under if they're unable to control their spending, you've got to think that surely there's a better, more ethical way to encourage a healthy amount of spending. So, part 3. How can we improve this system to be less predatory? So I've identified our 4 W's here to give us frame of reference when trying to come up with a new solution. We just addressed who and what. As for where the problem occurs, from my own and others' experience, I've judged it as something that occurs when people are lonely or simply wanting something to pass the time. And as for why, I've found some existing data to support this. Vladimir from Pixonic, the company behind the action gacha War Robots, discussed the collateral damage from implementing a poor gacha system into their game at the Game Developers Conference in 2019. So as for why it's important to improve these predatory practices and try to avoid them altogether, it's for a variety of reasons. To improve the perception from the games community, improve business morale, and potentially aid install bases due to better user reception. And now onto how we're going to think of these new solutions. So we're going to employ a few different techniques to allow us to think a bit broader. First of which is Scamper. It's an ideation method I'd encourage everyone to remind themselves of whenever they need to think of a new solution to a problem. So our first task, and a pretty simple one in theory, eliminate, so the E in Scamper, the daily aspect of gachas to allow for less time wasted daily and allow more flexibility to the consumer. In addition to this idea, adapting, so the A in Scamper, grinding so it's less time consuming could also prove to be a good idea. While grinding isn't necessarily a bad thing because it does somewhat artificially extend gameplay time, it would be nice to lessen it a little bit so it doesn't seem so tedious. To allow ourselves to make a few more educated decisions and ideas when we come up with solutions to this problem, a little bit of knowledge on game theory is needed. If we want to substitute or eliminate the daily aspect of it, we need a way to encourage people to still come back often in order to maintain a constant stream of revenue. To do this, we'll look at more traditional game theory, things that are implemented in video games, computer games, to keep players coming back and keep playing them, ways to keep the players involved. Ideas mentioned which could be of use to us in this aspect include maintaining good pacing, balancing of gameplay types, a mystery as for what's coming next, and a sense of positive feedback, rewarding the player for progressing. Some things to avoid were also mentioned in those videos before. I'll leave a link to them at the end because they are quite interesting. I've already mentioned how there's a drop-off in rewards once you leave the honeymoon phase, and resource decay is a big thing to avoid when looking to improve engagement. However, we have to be mindful to avoid a Skinner box situation, where the player is rewarded for completing mindless tasks. It just defeats the point of trying to remove the time sink aspect of it. The second task is quite tricky, as we do still need to have a constant source of revenue if we wanted to keep this theoretical game afloat, but we don't want to be malicious while we do this, so what do we do? Some things I would like to see added in the ideal gacha, which I haven't seen before, is the opportunity to add a spending limit that the player may put on themselves, giving them a warning when they are about to pass a threshold that they may set. It's a non-intrusive reminder for the player to control their spending. To encourage spending and ensure there's still income, we'd employ bundles, which are already in many games. We could modify them so they're less frequent and of good value. Generosity gives a lot to improve player relations and may encourage them to spend more. Some other ideas I thought of during the scamper process was to adapt the initial download process by making the player pay to download the game, and though they could likely access a trial. This has already been seen at the beginning of the smartphone era with games like Angry Birds and Plants vs. Zombies that you had to pay to download, but this now novel idea has not been implemented for use in a gacha game, so it could be interesting to bring it back and see what happens. More rewards is also not a bad thing, but could encourage a skin in a box situation, causing the game to not be fun, so we want to try to avoid this, but being more generous isn't necessarily a bad thing. Ads also aren't often seen in gacha games, but could become a simple addition, a little intrusive, but not too bad. We could combine this with the idea to pay to download the game to avoid ads, or even combine it with a subscription service to see constant revenue. The subscription service could also offer more rewards to the player, combining it with the second idea. There are other aspects of the game that I see as essential for any gacha, being a likable cast of characters or known cast of characters, an engaging storyline, genuine social aspects and community interaction, or skilled and strategic gameplay. Merrick on screen here is one of my favourite characters from Fire Emblem, and he's one of the first units that I built in that game because I liked him so much. These things ensure the game is fun, it keeps players coming back, and even if we remove the daily aspect, could make sure the game is actually played by people often to ensure revenue. From these steps of design thinking, we've done a lot. We've already discussed our audience and tried to switch our perspectives to try and view it from both consumer and business perspective. We understand why the players want to play the game, but we understand that businesses need to make money. We've defined the problems that exist in the gacha game model at present by thinking divergently, and have used Scamper to think of ideas that allow us to overcome these challenges. All that's left now is to build a prototype with some convergent thinking, and by making some decisions on what we want to do, and then test it. In addition to the things I think are needed in any game, some things I would like to see in my ideal game is here. Paying to download the game gives short-term gains while the game gains traction. Integration of a subscription service and constant updates is a way to guarantee the long-term future of the game. Improving the pacing can discourage hoarding so the player feels more free to use their resources, possibly encouraging more spending. And then if they don't get what they want on a banner, they would be more incentivized to blame their bad luck or their mismanagement of the resources, making the player blame themselves instead of the game, which is something good. Finally, a genuine progression system would also give more incentive to think about the game and give some intrinsic motivation for players wanting to come back. All these different aspects combine together to ensure that players want to play the game, but they aren't forced to play it all the time, and they want to spend money on it, but they're not forced to. As for testing, if I had the skills to make a prototype, I honestly would, and maybe someday I'll get around to it. I don't know what the future holds. I do honestly quite like some of the solutions made here, and any problems encountered could always be solved by just thinking a little larger, testing out something else. Realistically, the ideal game for me would have all my favourite characters from my favourite games, my new and improved gacha system and fun gameplay. On screen is my mock-up of the App Store logo using my somewhat limited graphic design skills. Thanks for watching. I'll include some resources for you to help with your own thinking if you want to come up with a solution, and some references I use to better understand the community. If you do come up with some ideas, let me know in the comments. Thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe and follow my socials.